Howdy, and welcome back to the Ineligibles podcast. It is game week. We are 3 days
Woo!
away from the start of the A&M and broader college football season for 2024. The off season is over. It's done. It's in the past, and the time for talk about playoffs and Connor Stallions and TV contracts and all that crap. It's all over with. It's time to talk about football, and we have with us Robert Behrens from Good Bull Hunting. Robert, how we feeling?
Man, like you said, it's been a long off season. We're getting down to just the last few days of it, so it's a good time to be a college football fan.
Yeah, for sure. And a little bit of taste in week zero. There's a couple of decent games Thursday and Friday, but it really kicks off in earnest on Saturday with a pretty full slate. But uh, before we get into all of that, we have to talk about the biggest news of the day is the new Texas A&M field logo and end zones and all that stuff. It looks similar to some stuff you had mocked up in the past for Good Bull Hunting.
Yeah, man, this is like it's very much in my wheelhouse. I like obsess over the like minutia and the aesthetics of college sports. So yeah, something I was super pumped about. And A&M for years we had maybe one of the most like minimalist fields in college football outside of maybe like maybe like you look at Notre Dame that has just like the striped end zones or whatever. But A&M
Right.
had just the white ATM at midfield, and then just the white letters and maroon trim in the end zone.
And yellow
And
goal lines,
yeah,
apparently.
and yellow goal lines are a thing that we did for decades for a reason that I can't find anyone that actually knows why. I think I heard it dates back to one of our field managers like eons ago.
Mm.
But yeah, but uh, brand new field design, which actually very interestingly, if you look at the field design that Duke had under Mike Elko, it's almost identical to what they just unveiled today. So I mean, pretty much tells you that whether it's Elko himself or it's someone on that staff that came with him, there's someone that has like very specific ideas of what they wanted, and they basically said, "Well, we had at Duke, we're bringing it here." So you got the Lone Star logo at midfield with the shape of Texas, which I think looks so much better and cleaner. And then, but probably the big news is maroon end zones, because we got told for years, and I've heard this from multiple field managers at different schools, so it's not just like BS that A&M was spinning. But I was told for years that the paint, over the course of an entire season, really does a number on the grass, and so that was the reason, especially with a dark paint like maroon. So that was why we never did it. But lo and behold, if it is an issue, I guess they're just going to make their peace with it, because we got
Right.
maroon end zones, we got maroon trim around the end zones. So it definitely adds like, I mean, it's like it really pops.
It does.
Just seeing the video of it, I mean it makes it look night and day difference.
Yeah, it's certainly a very sharp look, and it's going to look great on TV, I think, and obviously in person. But it just seems like this is probably a case of Elko just kind of doing what the fans kind of want, and he's not an old stick in the mud, like some previous coaches that we've had. Not going to say any names, but and we haven't even talked about this on here, but the black uniforms.
Yeah,
And like we haven't had an alternate uniform in 6 years, and they unveiled that. They unveiled white helmets. It's pretty cool to have a coach that doesn't see this as a distraction, but just like, oh, like this is what our fans and players like. Let's do it.
yeah, and Elko, I think at one of the coaches' nights over back in May or June, someone asked him about alternate uniforms in particular, but I feel like it kind of applies to all of this. And he talked about that, you know, some schools and some coaches are super traditional with that stuff. Some of them are really out there and do really crazy stuff. And he basically said that he likes to be kind of middle of the road, where and kind of have a mix of both. And he acknowledged that it's something the fans like, it's something that the players like, and part of his job is making A&M an attractive place for players to want to come spend 3 4 years playing football. And while yes, the biggest part of that is just wins on the field, it'd be silly to think that all of this other stuff doesn't impact them as well. I mean, because we're fans, like we're going to root for A&M no matter what. But like, I mean, I get excited about uniforms and about
Yeah.
fields, and it's anything that can get people excited and capture people's attention. And does it contribute? Like, does it help you win the game on Saturday? No, but it also doesn't take away from it either. And it's something that can bring more awareness to the program and bring more excitement to the program. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think you nailed that. I was actually reading an article on the Athletic from Sam Kahn earlier today, just talking about the overall culture change with A&M and with Elko coming in and things like that. So more about his background, but a part that stuck out to me was kind of you can kind of relate it to this, with the field and the uniforms. Is like Elko doesn't require any kind of dress code or
Yep.
like hair length, tattoos, piercings, any of that stuff. He doesn't care. He doesn't care what you listen to. If you want to play music at practice or workouts or whatever, it's about the work and it's about ball. It's about football. And there was a line in there, something about like this sport is tough. It can be really draining, and anything that can make that just a little bit easier and more pleasant, like then why not do it? And I think it's a pretty good mindset to have. But before we move on, black uniforms, yay or nay? You like them?
I feel like I need to see the whole uniform. Right now,
Yeah,
we've
that's
seen the
fair.
jersey, and like it's still a little unclear. Like, are we just getting a black jersey with the standard uniform, or are we getting like a full alternate set? I tend to think, given the fact that the uniform, it wasn't just like a black jersey and that's it, but it had like the silver and chrome accents on
Hmm.
it. That kind of leads me to believe that there's like, whether it's pants or a helmet or whatever, I kind of feel like there's like a full alternate that's coming. And it sounds like they're planning on wearing this for LSU, which isn't until the end of October.
Yeah.
So I wonder if maybe they maybe release the jersey early to build excitement and sell some jerseys, to be honest, and then maybe get like a second dose of all of that publicity when they release the full set, maybe at some point in October.
Right.
But I mean, but yeah, but once again, like I don't, so I don't want us to go back to the someone era where we had like multiple alternate uniforms every year. It was like a different uniform combination every week. Like I don't want that. Like I want it, to be still relatively straightforward with like knowing what your home uniform is, what your road uniform is.
Yeah.
But I also like I want to change it up and kind of like we said, like Elko wanting to live in kind of that middle of the road where not be like crazy off the wall, but also have more than just two uniform combinations.
Yeah, for sure. And I think I'm more excited about the white helmet with the maroon face mask than I am
Yeah,
the black uniforms.
that looked real nice.
My favorite, like, even though they got their asses kicked by Oklahoma when they wore them in '09, I think, against Oklahoma with Gerard Johnson at quarterback. Really super clean look with like the all white uniforms and the maroon face mask. It's pretty sharp, but very excited to see like what game they unveil that for and where they and like, when they're going to wear that.
I wouldn't put it past them to wear it this Saturday.
They might, yeah, they definitely might.
I mean, they've already been breaking them in during practice, so
Yeah, for sure. Also, on the if there is a black helmet, it wouldn't shock me if the black helmet has the Lone Star logo on the side instead of the traditional like
yeah.
ATM. So yeah, I mean that's all exciting. It's fun for us fans and the players and everything. But it's game week. It's 3 days away if you're with us live. 2 days if you're listening in podcast world. I don't think you could ask for a bigger opportunity than the one Elko and A&M have on Saturday. Not to go over the top cheesy, but it reminds me of the speech in Miracle of the USA hockey coach. He's like, guys, he's like, you have an opportunity tonight, and like obviously Notre Dame is not the Soviet Union in hockey. They're a very very good team, but we have a good team as well. Obviously, college game day, 106 or 7 plus thousand in the stands at Kyle Field, which is insane. Um, I don't even know most of the names because they're mostly kids from next year's class. But yeah, I mean, you couldn't ask for a bigger chance to go out there and announce, the new A&M to the rest of the country.
Yeah, and just the fact that so often, like when you open up against a G5 team or an FCS team, um, even though it's super exciting and you can watch the game and have a lot of optimism, you often walk away feeling like, okay, it's like that was really fun, but we're not actually going to know much about this team until we play so and so, or until like 2 weeks away, whatever. So it's a little bit, it's exciting and maybe a little bit terrifying knowing that like you're just going to know right away whether this team is going to be something special this year. Now it's like, granted, there's a whole range of outcomes. Right now, it feels very binary of like either we're going to win and we're going to the playoff, or we lose and we're going to be 6-6. There's a big range in between there where we could lose, but it'd be very competitive, and this team continues to ascend over the course of the season and still has a very good year. Um, we could win, we could falter down the stretch and find out Notre Dame wasn't actually that good, and then look back on this thing kind of like we did South Carolina in 2014.
Right.
But sitting here right now, like you said, looking around the country, and especially with this being the first game of the Mike Elko era, it's hard to ask for a better proving ground for your team just right out of the gate.
Yeah, and there's not really another game on at that time slot that's even worth watching. So I think it wouldn't shock me at all if it comes out on on Sunday or Monday that this was the most viewed game of the weekend. Pushing. I think Elko even mentioned that yesterday or day before about like it's probably going to have 4 or 5 million eyeballs on it. So it's super exciting. I think Elko is up for the challenge. I think A&M is ready to go out there and show the progress that they've made from last year to this year. In terms of this game, and obviously like we can talk season implications afterwards, but what are some of the key things you're looking for, like from what you know about Notre Dame and where A&M might match up? Like how do you kind of see this thing playing out, or some things to kind of watch?
Uh, well, what strikes me more than anything is just when you describe the two teams and you can, talk about strengths, weaknesses, how they're going to fare. Like you could almost just like switch the names of schools and players and make the same breakdown for both sides, because both teams come in with really strong defenses, especially on the front four. Um, and then both sides on offense have what they think is a really talented quarterback, but maybe playing in front of a suspect offensive line, especially compared to the talented defensive lines on the other side. Um, and so, I mean, I think overall, and I referenced this, I think on Twitter earlier today. If this played out like A&M Nebraska 2010, it wouldn't at all surprise me. I think we're all hoping for more scoring than that, and that was a
Sure.
9-6 like slog of a game. But I do think that I think it's going to be a very defensive battle, and I'm not an X's and O's guy by any stretch of the imagination. But it feels like one of those where unless there's just like some crazy turnovers, like like defensive touchdowns, big plays, whatever. I don't feel like you're going to see just a wealth of offense out of this
Yeah.
game.
Yeah, and like even with like obviously I think both quarterbacks are very talented, um, and both in new offenses, and things may not click right away for either one.
Yeah.
And it could look a lot like Notre Dame's game last year against Ohio State. And Ohio State wasn't great on offense last year, like certainly not where they were with CJ Stroud and Garrett Wilson and those guys, but still like a good offense. And that was just like that was a slog. Like it was a total rock fight, just back and forth. I think the final was like 17-14, which would be well under the over under of 46.5 for this game. So if you are a betting man out there, I would run to go bet the under on this one.
But all that means is that it's going to hit the over somehow.
Yeah,
Because
exactly.
because I've always said like that. That's why I don't put any money on sports betting whatsoever. Because I feel like so many times whenever there's something that I'm like, oh, this is like the easiest money that I've ever seen.
Right.
That's inevitably when it goes the other way,
Yeah.
and I'm sure like a bunch of bettors just completely take a bath.
Yeah. For sure.
Um, but yeah, it's what has surprised me though is you reference like the betting line, and it's that and that A&M is favored by 3 points in this game. And I get some of that movement is based on injuries and things like that, but it just kind of underscores and a lot of what you've like seen just nationally as well. I've been surprised by the number of people not affiliated with A&M that seem to be buying in and having a lot of faith in this team.
Yeah.
Because I really thought that, that obviously all of us would say, well, we paired all the talking points that this team still has a lot of talent. You're bringing in this new coaching staff that's going to have better schemes. It's going to have an improved culture, blah, 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 blah. Um, but I mean, it seems like everyone else is just nationally, there's so many other people that are like seeing those same things and saying, yeah, like this team could be really good to the point that you are seeing A&M kind of, despite what the rankings say, um, somewhat entering this game feeling like the team that people are expecting to win, which is so like strange, if not absurd, just because I feel like we had to keep like I feel like I have to keep reminding people like, look, it's like Notre Dame won 10 games last year and we went 7-6.
Yeah.
They're
I mean,
ranked number
if
7, we're ranked number 20. And I'm not saying that we can't win because I certainly think we can. Um, but it won't be surprising if Notre Dame wins. And it's not going to be anything shameful for A&M, if Notre Dame wins because it's the first game of a new coaching regime.
yeah,
And
and
so no matter
so,
what happens, like you can't overreact too much to it.
yeah, and trust me, like I've served a lot of Kool-Aid on this particular podcast like over the last couple of weeks, and yeah, there's a lot that I really do like about this A&M team and the coaching staff especially, but this is not the overrated. I think a lot of people will see Notre Dame and see a high number by their name, to start the year and be like, oh, they're
Yeah.
overrated. Like, oh, they're always overrated. I think this team is actually a pretty good football team. Maybe one of the, I mean, certainly one of the best we'll play. If not, they could be top 2 or 3 best teams that we play this year, and they have their own issues, but they have a lot going for them as well. Third year of their coaching regime. The DC's been there for 3 years. He's got his system in place. They think they've upgraded at the offensive coordinator. They've upgraded at quarterback, and all those kinds of things. So while I'm going to pick A&M to win in a pretty narrow margin. It's not the end of the world and not shameful at all if they come up just a little bit short.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I do think you hit on something, and that is that everyone is always so anxious to claim that Notre Dame is being overrated because, and they have like in a lot of big moments, especially in the playoff, that they've come up short, and so it's not completely unjustified to have that opinion, but that could be playing into part of it is that it's the rare time where I feel like A&M is probably the less hated or the less like controversial program in this matchup.
Well, yeah, and you couldn't say that the past 2 years if the former staff was still here.
Yeah,
And something that I think you see a lot from almost everyone in the national media is people have a ton of respect for Mike Elko as a coach and as a person too. I think, but like when people bring this game up, they're like, oh, like A&M, like they've got a coach now. Like he knows what he's doing. He did great things at Duke and A&M and all this other stuff. But it's nice to have a coach that people think positively of, and it's not just like, oh, 75 million, fast talking Jimbo and like all this
yeah,
other just bull crap that was just ancillary to the actual football game. So it's definitely nice to have that change, but like even I think from what I've seen from a Notre Dame perspective, I think when they look at the whole season, they're pretty positive. Like they have a great defense and all those kinds of things. The schedule is pretty light, and even with the O line, they can probably get it rounded into form to still go and win, 10 or 11 games if they drop A&M. But so I hear the confidence from them on the season still, but not like they kind of dance around this game a little bit and aren't as committed. Even Aaron Taylor, he's a CBS analyst, played at Notre Dame. He was like, yeah, he's like, I think A&M probably wins out because their D line against Notre Dame's O line. So that's certainly a matchup to watch. But in terms of A&M, like we've talked all offseason about these position groups and things like that, but just kind of seeing it for the first time, like what are you going to have your eyes on Saturday?
Um, I mean, biggest thing for me is offensive line, just because, and we've talked so much about this. I just think that's so much the linchpin of what this team's potential can be. Because the past two seasons, it's been not even just average; it's been bad. It's been one of the worst offensive lines in the Power Five, and that's severely hampered what this team can do. As much as we all love to rail against Jimbo's offense, um, his offense would have been a lot more effective if we could, protect the quarterback. Um, and so I think we're all excited about the scheme that Colin Klein is going to bring. But the only way that that's really, really going to make a big difference is if it's not getting handicapped by poor offensive line play. So tons of reasons why we think that could improve, both between experience and also bringing in new coaches. But yeah, that'll definitely be the one thing that like when the offense first takes the field, I'll have like my eyes zeroed in on that line, which is rare for me. Normally, I'm very much the fan that I'm just watching the ball.
Yeah,
But yeah, I'll definitely be keeping an eye on see how those guys are holding up.
yeah, and I talked about that a little bit on Monday with I thought it was telling that they did put on the depth chart that they released Armaj Reed Adams at right guard, no or next to his name. So I'm gonna take that
Yeah,
at face value that he is the starter at right guard, and will not be moving around on the offensive line, which he still could. But at this point, I'm expecting him to go out there and be the full time starter at right guard. The other spots still ongoing. We don't really know. I think Cooley and Naboo. That's a pretty intense battle right there at center. I think I would lean Naboo, but I really have no idea who runs out there. On the first offensive snap on Saturday, and then at right tackle, you kind of have two options. I think with Ruben Fothery, he showed so well as a freshman against Alabama, and obviously 6'7", or 6'8", really, long arms, great pass blocker. But Crownover is still kind of has not gone away in that battle, and you could see both of them on Saturday. I think from looking at some film from last year, if we want to run the ball, then like if that's going to be our thing, then yeah, you should put Crownover in there because he's going to maul some people. but
yeah,
and he can be a very good pass blocker. It's just some of the quicker guys, he can have a little misstep here and there, and allow some pressure. But hey, he is only been a full time tackle for a couple years now. Still learning the spot. Has a much better coach coaching him this year. So I think offensive line, really offense in general, is kind of top of mind for every A&M fan going into this. Like we have a lot of high hopes with our quarterback and with our new play caller after the last 6 years, seeing a little more modern and creativity on offense. That's something that we definitely have our eyes on. On the other side, not as a like, oh, I can't wait to see how they do because I know how they're going to do. It's just seeing the guys on this defensive line
yeah,
just absolutely go off. And I think I want to temper things a little bit on that front because I spent a lot of time on Monday talking about how Notre Dame is very young on the O line. True freshman left tackle, redshirt freshman left guard, young right tackle, kind of youth across the board there, and not a lot of experience. I don't think A&M gets a sack or a tackle for loss on every single play because of that, but
but what if we
uh,
did?
but what if we did? But I think it's going to severely limit what they can do on offense. And if you don't know the name or number of Nick Scorton, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, you're going to know the numbers 11, 5, and 4 after this weekend for sure.
Yeah, man, and I'll add onto that. I think seeing with this secondary, what the secondary can do just effectively,
Yeah.
but also just who is going to be out there. The secondary, was pretty much littered with oars in that depth chart. Um, and so, and not only that, not just the uncertainty with who starts, but It's just so many new names. And so, for people that aren't like really plugged in the offseason like we are, that, scour the transfer portal, there's going to be a lot of Aggie fans that they're seeing like guys making tackles and defending passes, and they're saying who? Because that was a essentially completely remade unit last year, outside of Bryce Anderson and Tyreek Chappelle, both of which have changed positions since last year.
Right.
So
Yeah.
really, by that metric, it is a completely new unit than what we saw just a season ago.
Well, we talk about rotation on the offensive line with trying to find your starters. You might see more rotation at defensive back than anywhere else. With
Yeah,
like, there's I don't know 18 oars on in the defensive backfield on that depth chart they released. So I think that there's an upper echelon of I don't know probably 9 or 10 guys that are probably all going to see at least a little bit of playing time this weekend.
yeah. Well, and even you know, I think it was Carter Carrolls that mentioned that Jaden Hill from Florida actually has to sit out the first half because he had a targeting penalty in his last game of last season
Yeah,
at a different school,
yeah.
uh,
No, it's
which
so
is a
dumb.
weird quirk of the targeting penalty rule.
Yeah,
But yeah, but so there's a chance you might see Chappelle at nickel in the first half, and then in the second half it's Hill, and Chappelle may be moving somewhere else. So yeah, and that'll be fun to watch.
yeah.
And that'll be one more than anything where it's like I'll have to be like sitting there with like my roster on my phone trying to
Exactly.
figure out who the heck is out there.
I'm not sure if you do this, but on every clip that the A&M football Twitter account puts out there, like the actual like video clips, I'm like slow motioning to like see like
Oh
who's
yeah,
who's with the ones, like what number
right,
is
yeah,
this? And like with the defensive backs, it's always different. Like if you look on the one today that they posted, like Javon Thomas is like a quote unquote first stringer at corner, and so yeah, I think a bunch of those guys play, and we talked about it before the show, like just trying to see, like you can only see so much in practice, like put the guys in a real game under the lights in a pressure situation, and see who shines. So definitely excited about that. Well, let's do a couple of like I guess season long superlatives or predictions. Um, I didn't really prep you for this, but uh, let's each give a bold prediction. Maybe just I guess we can do one each side of the ball. But mine was going to be before the injury that Ruben Owens catches 30 plus passes this year. I'm gonna crank it down just a little bit and say EJ Smith will catch 25 passes this year and be a third down receiving option out of the backfield.
I like that. Let's see. I'll say I'll say Terry Bussey scores 5 offensive touchdowns this year.
So not including special teams, just
Right.
offense.
Yeah, just offense.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
like
I
that.
feel like special teams makes that a little bit less bold.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Unless you say like seven or
Well,
something like
and
that.
well, and like, and I get that like that doesn't sound like a whole bunch. You say, oh, 5 and 12 games is not crazy. But I remember like last year, Noah Thomas had 5, and that led the team in receiving touchdowns. So now, granted, we're hoping overall that we're getting more touchdowns. Period. Um,
For sure.
so when I predict Bussy having 5, I'm not pinning that on that. That's the most on the team.
Yeah, yeah, no doubt. Um, on defense, I should have probably been better at my notes about this. I'm trying to think of a bold prediction on defense. Um, I think I think Damian Sanford takes over as the full time starter at weak side linebacker at some
Ooh,
point. And if he's eligible for it, I don't think if he redshirted last year. Um, if he is eligible, then he will make freshman All SEC,
ooh, that'd be fantastic.
right?
uh, Yes, like part of me, like, and I want to. I'm trying to sit here and think, like a sack total between Scorton and Stewart, and like how high does that number have to be to sound bold at this
Right,
point?
like
So,
30.
I mean that because that's the thing is the number that first pops into my head is like 20, which I was like, why? But I mean, like that could be pretty realistic. So I don't
Right.
even know. So we'll split the difference, and I'll say 25, just so it doesn't sound like I'm wussing out on it.
Yeah.
But that's a ton of sacks for two
They're,
players.
they're going to have like 7 combined on Saturday. We're gonna have to move that number up.
Yeah,
You remember was it 2015 where Deshaun Hall had like 4 in the first game against Arizona State?
yeah, I think so.
And I think he finished with 8 total. But man, coming out of the gates, it was like, man, we're gonna we're gonna sack every quarterback we play.
That's always the fun thing. It's like with these first games, is like because there's going to be somebody that has some like really big like statistical outlier performance,
Yeah,
and we're all just going to take that and be like, well, just multiply that times 12, and he's going to set the like SEC record for whatever.
yeah, exactly. When you look at college sack numbers, like there's really never, you know, I think Will Anderson had like a crazy number, but no one gets like 20 sacks in college. Like
Yeah,
it's extremely rare. I think Miles broke the record. Well, it was a freshman record, but like he had 13 as a freshman, and
yeah, something like that.
so I mean our leader on the team last year had 8. So if we have one guy get double digits, and that was like we had a lot of team sacks last year, so just one guy getting to double digits would be a pretty big deal. Breakout players, offense and defense. I think we may have the same one on defense because there's a guy I like that I know you like a lot too. So I'll let you go first on defense, so I don't steal him.
Okay. Uh there's a couple guys. Mainly, I'm going to go with Dalton Brooks.
Damn it! See,
Because
I
I
knew it.
think because he's just one of those players that he didn't really start last year, but he did see some game action, and it felt like every time he was in the game, you noticed him, and he was making a positive play, and so just giving him that extra year of development and hopefully putting it in an even better scheme. I think especially playing next to Bryce Anderson.
Yeah,
I feel like he could be a guy that he's in position to make a ton of plays.
yeah, and he's interesting because like when I first saw him on the field for A&M last year, he looked a little bit smaller than what I thought he would be. I think because he played 2A ball, he just looked huge compared to the other players.
Mm-hmm.
So he got here, he looked very normal sized. But he's not the biggest guy in the world. But man, he plays super physical. He had the interception in the Texas Bowl, and looked like a playmaker. So that was the guy that I had written down. So
Yeah,
I
he's
will.
got a little bit of Donovan Wilson in him. I feel like.
Yeah, yeah, just kind of always in the right spot. I could definitely see that. I'll go with the guy. I'm not sure if you can count it as a breakout because he did it in a different conference, and he hasn't really done it here. But I think Cassius Howell,
Yeah.
um, the defensive end from Bowling Green, actually listed as a jack linebacker on the depth chart.
Hmm.
But I think he led the MAC in sacks last year. So you're like, oh,
He
I keep
did.
looking for a breakout. But that's certainly not the level of competition that he'll see in the SEC. But um, he's getting a lot of love right now. There's a lot of talk around him. I think he kind of is lost amongst like the national guys don't know about him at all. They're like, oh,
Right.
they have Nick Scorton and Shamar Turner, and they have a great D line, but that's about it. And but you're gonna see. I think he's number 18 now. He was 34 in the spring. Now he's number 18. You're gonna see 18 make some plays all season long. I think on offense, I think I've trumpeted Chase Basantis too much for me to pick him today. So instead, I'm going to pick Micah Tease. I think A&M fans are kind of guilty, and all fans really are guilty of getting a 4-star, top 150 kind of kid, and then he doesn't play a lot, and then you don't hear a lot about him, for a little while, and then as he starts getting older, things just kind of starting to click for him, and like fans are way too impatient with player development in general. If someone's a 5-star, he's got to get on the field right now and have 10 touchdowns and this, that, and the other. But I think Micah Tease, as a true sophomore, you're starting to hear his name a lot more. He's my guy to break out on offense.
Well, mine's very similar. I'm actually going to go Cyrus Allen.
Okay.
Um, Transfer wide receiver from Louisiana Tech. Seemed like he was in a starting role in the spring game, and that held true on the depth chart we saw this week. Um, and I think it just seems like one of those guys, like super fast. I think they're saying like one of maybe one of the fastest wide receivers on the team. Um, and I think just a guy that brings experience and is kind of that like that slot receiver that I think could do very well in the Colin Klein offense.
Yeah, for sure. And I like that we both pick receivers because we need that in a big way. I think,
Well, I figure picking Connor Wigman as a breakout isn't really
yeah,
all that original.
yeah, yeah. And I think you might could say that Noah Thomas is kind of already broken out.
Yeah,
But maybe, like for a bolder take, like what if, Noah Thomas plays at a, all SEC kind of level, which we're not predicting that, but he's certainly capable, and could have that kind of season if he truly breaks out. But yeah, I think receiver's a spot I'm still, it's been, I feel like anything I'm going to say for the rest of this show has just been talked to death already. But that's what this show's about. Like we're here for the hardcore fans that need something to listen to in the days leading up. So receiver, man, I've got my eye on that. But season predictions. We had our Good Bull Hunting roundtable go up on Monday. I think you and I were the bookends of the high and low,
we were. Yeah,
the high and low marks on the record. And I think, and you can talk about it, but it was kind of like a little bit superstition involved, like not a ton, but just a little bit from being burned in the past on some of the record things you've written before.
yeah. Yeah. Because I've had multiple years of like shooting for the moon with predictions, and then we're just constantly coming coming in several wins below what my total is. Um, but yeah, so I picked 8-4 for end of year record, and that really was like that's like me like just kind of I had this like hot air balloon of optimism that I'm just kind of like pulling on the rope to keep it down because I know myself and I've realized that over the years I usually like overestimate what this team is going to be. Now, granted, it's like a lot of that was under Jimbo, so maybe we can just throw all that out the window and it's going to be great. Um, but I can absolutely see the path to this team being 9-3, 10-2. If things go really well, yeah, even beyond that. Um, but I just try to like factor in like, okay, but like there are going to be aspects that aren't as good as you think they're going to be. There are going to be like injuries that happen. There's going to be bounce of ball stuff where just bad luck happens and it costs you a game. And so I tried to factor all that in and say, okay, like I feel like if all that happens and we're at 8-4, um, maybe no one's just like jumping for joy about it, but we're at least in this spot where like, okay, that was a good season and it's something to build on going forward.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And I think it's possible that I got a tad carried away predicting 10-2. But like I mean, I was torn between 10-2 and 9-3, and a lot of it, if this was one of the schedules we've had in the past, I can tell you right now, I would not be predicting that. Like if we had, Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and the 2019 version of LSU, and we played them
Yeah.
there, then yeah, I would not say, oh yeah, we're definitely going 10-2. But the schedule is what put it over the top for me. Yeah, I don't think you could drop a better one if you tried. I mean, unless we just didn't play Notre Dame at all. We just played Ball State or somebody. But I was talking to someone about a month ago, and asked me about A&M, and I was like, I think they're going to be pretty good. They could win 10 games even. And he was like, but if you weren't a fan, would you still feel that way? And I was like, look, if A&M if they would just stop recruiting really good players, I would stop picking them to win 10 games. So
Yeah, it's true.
it's pretty baffling the amount of talent that has been squandered by the past coaching staffs, and but somehow that talent has only continued to go up, and so there's something that I wrote down that I wanted to bring up, but uh, I think outside of Terry Bussey, does any true freshman even see the field like for any meaningful reps this year? Because I feel like there's a pretty veteran team here, and like we've had true freshmen that have had to start the whole season on the O line in the past, like last year, 2021, where you had two of them. But heck, last year our middle linebacker was a true freshman, and made freshman All American. But I think it's an old team. It's a very talented team, and fingers crossed is a more organized and better coach team with some really good players on it. That's kind of where I'm at. But you know, but yeah, like back to the freshman thing. Is anyone else besides Bussy like I don't even know who my second guy would be to pick to even get in the mix.
Yeah. I mean, I really can't think of one. No, I mean, yeah, I
There,
mean, I don't think there is. And we've heard some buzz about Isaiah Williams, a wide receiver.
right?
Um, but I mean, generally, nothing to the point that he's going to be in the starting lineup.
Yeah,
Um, yeah, but I agree, and that's rare. Normally you're at least talking about two or three guys that are going to be pushing to for that starting role. And you talked about just in general the roster being a little bit older. I know this past week, 247 put out their team talent composite, which they do every fall,
hmm
and A&M was number 7, which us being that high isn't all that unusual. We were number 4 for the past 2 seasons. But the interesting thing was I went in and I said, okay, it's like how many of our 4 and 5 star players, how many of them are in their third year or older? So they're not
right.
true freshmen, true sophomores. And it is 47% were upperclassmen. Which just for college in general, it's normally it's like the farther you go, the smaller those numbers are because guys transfer out or guys wash out or they go pro early. So having half of your blue chips essentially be guys in their third and fourth and fifth years, that's a really experienced team at the college level, and that's something A&M has not had the past couple of years. Especially
Yeah,
with that 2022 class that everyone wants to bag on them because they came in and the team goes 5-7. But I think people are going to be surprised at the fact that when this team takes the field this year and there's guys making plays and they're like, oh, there's Connor Wigman and there's Noah Thomas and there's Shamar Stewart and
I was about to
there's
say the
Bryce
same
Anderson. There's
thing.
all
Yeah,
these guys from that class that everyone joked about that they all transferred away, and
yeah,
they're going to realize there's a lot of really good that's still a top 7 or top 5 type 7 class just with the guys who were left.
yeah. And I think it's like something that I keep coming back to is that in the 2020 season, uh, that like our last very good year, 9-1, finish in the top 5, Orange Bowl victory, all that kind of stuff. Really great year for A&M. That team was like, I think they had to round up to be at 50% on the blue chip ratio. It was like 49.5%, and I know by the blue chip ratio, this is like in the 80s, but even the team talent is what, like 67, something like that. Like they're 7th overall
Yeah.
in the country. Like our best team in recent memory wasn't anywhere close to that, but they were very old. Like you had a veteran O line, a veteran quarterback, some nice pieces at running back and receiver, pretty old on defense as well. So I think in 2022 we kind of had our hopes of like we have the best freshman class ever, and some older guys that are good players, and things just kind of fell apart, and we relied too heavily on some talented true freshmen. Now the guys that are still here, in their third years, um, like you said, a lot of them are our best players, like Connor, Noah, Shamar Stewart, all those kind of guys, and Donovan Green if he gets back healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think people definitely saw the headlines. A&M fires Jimbo Fisher, loses every player they have to the transfer portal, and yeah, they're gonna be shocked if they haven't followed and be like, oh, like this is still a really good looking football team, by a physical measure. But yeah, so I think that's the I guess the age or the experience of this team is in a pretty good spot, and the talent is as well. And they've actually used the transfer portal about as good as you could have hoped for a first year head coach.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, because it was what they brought in. 20, was it 24, 26 guys, something like that?
Yeah, I think so.
Um, so like I mean, one of the largest transfer portal classes in the country, but also I think you're going to see, and you saw it on that depth chart. There's a good number of those transfers that they're going to be starting, this Saturday.
Yeah,
So it's hard to understate. It's like how I think how big of an impact that's going to have, and but that's the beauty of college football today is that you know a new coach doesn't have to come in and say, okay, give me 3 to 4 years. He can say, like, I'm going to take the talent I have, and whatever we lack, I'm going to go get it from the portal, and we should be able to at least be competitive right away.
yeah, for sure. And I think like I don't want to spend very much time at all talking about like future seasons, but like honestly, when I look at next season and the guys that you're very likely to lose off of this team, I'm like, gosh, like we're gonna lose a lot of good players, and I'm not sure we can really replace like some of those guys, but that just gives our staff more, funds, for lack of a better word, freed
Yeah,
up to go and attack the portal all over again. And I'm like, if and not that, I doubt they find a Nick Scorton every single year. That's not very likely to happen. But if you find a plus player that's a third year guy at a premium position, I think that's going to be the expectation going forward. It's like, hey, we're going to get our high school guys that we like a lot and develop them, but still hit the portal. And you're right. You don't have to sit here and go, well, it's Mike Elko's first year. Hopefully by year 3 we can win a bowl game, and that sort of thing. Like it's set up to win a lot of games right now, thanks to the work in the transfer portal. Um, but yeah, I mean, I'm pumped to see it on the field. I think we talked about all these different guys and what we kind of want to see. The coaches, Colin Klein and Connor Wigman, and Nick Scorton in the D line, the new defensive backs. I want to see Tori York out there with the green dot on his helmet, barking out defensive calls and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I'm pumped to have football back. But I want to hit a couple national things. But before we do, any kind of last like closing thoughts on A&M before we finally get to see our team on the field.
man. Oh, kind of like I told you before we started recording. Part of it is just like I'm so sick of hearing people talk about it. I just want to see it.
Yeah,
Because that's what we've done all off season. And I realized we just talked for another 45 minutes about it. But yeah, just the fact that we're just days away from finally like definitively knowing some things about this team. We're not going to go know everything about this team after Saturday, but there's definitely going to be things like, okay, like they were good at this, like they weren't doing well at this. Um, and so just to actually have some concrete um, things to kind of grab onto as opposed to just speculation, I think is we're all super duper ready for it.
yeah, and I was just telling my wife this the other day. I'm like, it's so much easier once the season kind of settles in because you actually have real things, like tangible things to talk about and analyze
Yeah.
and write about and whatnot. But like at this point in the off season, you know, we've all said what we want to like what we want to say and how we feel about it. And like even if there was some, like amazing content coming out, I'm kind of over it,
Yeah.
unless you're telling me the future that we win on Saturday, and you have a time machine, then there's not really much that I even care to hear about until it gets here. So
Yes.
um,
Kind of. Yeah. To paraphrase Mike Elko, like we don't want to talk about it. We want to be about
that's
it.
right. That's in our intro. So
There you go.
yeah, there you go. I got to give a shout out to Pierce. Pierce is one of our very first listeners. I want to go back to Cam Coleman would have been a breakout freshman for us. Absolutely, he would have.
Yeah,
It'd be, you might still have Terry Bussey on defense if Cam Coleman was here. So
for sure.
that's the one that got away. But if you had to, you know, lose Cam Coleman to fire Jumbo Fisher and hire Elko, I think it's a trade that we'd all make that. So
I'll just make him regret it, and then he'll transfer back here in a couple of years.
yeah, I mean we're gonna have Cam Coleman and DJ Lagway here next year.
Yeah, yeah.
A buddy of mine drafted DJ Lagway in a dynasty college draft. And he's like, "Oh yeah, he's gonna be A&M starter next year." So I went in and grabbed it.
Nice.
Nationally, I guess I say nationally, but like I guess SEC. With obviously OU and Texas joining, Georgia. I'm not ready to go there on Georgia and say like, oh, they're not as good as they have been, but uh, I think I might take the field in this year's like championship race, like in the SEC and at large. I think Georgia, Ohio State are probably the top two, betting favorites, and they've invested a lot into this season. But I think with some transfer portals and honestly, just like Georgia has great defensive linemen, but not like they were, in 2021 when they had five guys, in the first round or whatever. But I guess like who are some teams like everyone says, oh, you know the SEC is going to get 5 or 6 teams in the playoff and that sort of thing. Aside from the favorites, like who's a team like a Tennessee or Ole Miss, or maybe even like a Missouri, that you might pick to make it to the playoff this year? Aside from A&M, because we all know that we're going
Sure.
to
Well,
lose.
yeah, obviously A&M. As much as it pains me to say it, I feel like Ole Miss could be in a really good spot. Just because I mean they've kind of been ascending for the past couple years, and then they really did push all their chips in the middle of the table with their transfer portal haul over the offseason. So I feel like they have all the ingredients to be really really good. And now for better or for worse, A&M doesn't even play them this year,
Right.
which in some ways stinks because I personally like Lane Kiffin drives me nuts. So I would have liked to have another shot at taking him down a peg. But I mean, I think there's a chance they could be really good and definitely will be in the thick for a playoff spot.
Yeah, and I'm trying to like I don't have their schedule pulled up, but I think their toughest game is Georgia, which I mean, even if you lose that and sweep the rest, I mean it could be a rematch in the SEC title game with the new layout. So like their non-con is super weak. They play Wake Forest, and like that's their biggest non-conference game, right? Like their only P5 non-conference game. I'm interested in Missouri, and I think A&M is a very pivotal game for them. I had a stats guy on a few weeks back, Kelly Ford, and he was like, "This is kind of make or break, like it's almost make or break for Missouri this year because like they are recruiting better, but their schedule is similar to A&M, where it's about as easy as you can ask for. Like I think they're two like tough games by a mile, or Alabama and A&M. Like they don't play Ole Miss, they don't play Tennessee, they don't play Texas, they don't play Georgia. So like that's a it's a pretty manageable 10-2. If
Yeah.
they can come by that. But they have Luther Burden, probably the first receiver off the board next year's draft. So yeah, I mean it. Yeah, I think they got some good coaches up there too. So I've got my eye on Missouri as one of the SEC. And honestly, I haven't like mapped this out as far as schedules go, but I think at least four SEC teams get in this year. Yeah, I think between and probably the Big Ten too. But you have your four conference championships, and then your G5 team, and then the rest is going to be just SEC and Big Ten. And so, which is great for A&M. If you win 10 games, you're probably in there. So, in
Yeah, yeah,
in most years. So, but
yeah.
yeah,
The hard thing there is like you start doing the math. It's like so there's um, there's obviously 12 playoff spots. Five of them are conference auto bids. So then you've got seven at-larges left. And if you're saying that like there's if each the Big Ten and the SEC both get four teams, that means they're each getting three at-larges.
yeah,
So that would mean out of the seven at-large spots, there's only one that's not Big Ten or SEC. Now it's like I don't think that's at all impossible because I think just you look around the country and you say like who in the Big 12 or who in the ACC is going to be that second team that comes up and takes it, and there may not be one.
yeah.
Um,
Well, and to fill that in, it's probably Notre Dame.
yeah, very true.
And if there's a year where Notre Dame misses the playoff, it'll be kind of shocking, unless they have just some bear of a schedule. But And then you look at the ACC, and like one of their better hopes to make it uh, just lost their first game with Florida
Yeah,
State.
true.
Yeah, they really need Miami or Clemson to put it all together and get back in it. It's but and what's super interesting is people are already you know not getting this on Twitter, which shocker, people are dumb on Twitter.
Yeah.
But when people post their predictions, they're like, "Oh, how is Kansas State your fourth team?" I'm like, they won their conference. They get the auto bid as number four or
I've
three or
been
whatever.
I've been shocked at the number of people who we've literally known about this playoff format for years, and people just like still don't know how it's actually structured.
Yeah. How do you have
I guess they'll
Jacksonville
find
State
out.
in your top 12?
Yeah.
I guess that's a good question because I have no idea who I would pick. But like, what G5 team is out there that could really, or like one of them has to make it.
I feel like Liberty's got to be like the
Yeah,
favorite
that's
going
true.
in.
Yeah, I think in my brain I just try to not pick them because they're such a massive favorite to just run the table on their schedule.
Yeah, yeah,
But yeah, that's very much the most likely outcome is Liberty gets in,
yeah.
and
I might have picked SMU if they would have stayed G5.
yeah, that's true. Um, I would have still until I saw them on Saturday,
Yeah,
which
that'll be the other thing is like how many of the like really casual fans are going to tune in this Saturday and like be shocked that Texas and OU are in the SEC. You got Oregon, UCLA, USC, Washington in the Big Ten, and then like Cal, Stanford, and SMU in the ACC. It's like how many people are going to tune
yeah,
in and be like, "Wait, what?"
yeah.
Because it's like even if it's
Yeah.
something that they heard about at some point, they didn't know that like it's here.
Oh yeah, no, there's like some close friends of mine that are in our we have a college fantasy league like a dynasty, and he's like, oh, I can draft SMU players now. I was like, yeah, they're in the ACC. He was like the AAC. I'm like, no, the ACC with
Right.
Clemson and Miami and Virginia Tech. He was like, what? He's like, that doesn't make any sense. I was like, I know. I was like, so is Cal, so is Stanford, but
Yeah.
um, it's wild. Uh, as we get out of here, I've got to make a funny joke about one of these comments. So Ricky T, he asked, let me see if I can find it. If we I'll scroll up, uh, if we win, do we carry Elko off the field? If they did that, it'd take a whole bunch of
I was
us.
just saying, it's like I'm not touching that one.
I love the head man. I think Elko would probably make that joke himself. That you better have an army if you're
Yeah.
gonna carry me off this thing.
I will touch on that though, because I know I've seen people talk about it. Like, if we win, I would really like us to not rush the field. Um,
You,
because
you you'd rather us not do it, okay?
yeah, well, I mean, I just feel like because, like you said, it's yes, they're higher ranked, but we're the favored team by the betting line, and I just feel like like rushing the field isn't for like every upset. It's for like program changing, like like
Right.
completely like unexpected outcomes. Like when we beat Bama in 2021, after starting the season 2-2, we were a 3 touchdown underdog. And then it was like a walk off, like a field goal to win it. That
Yeah.
was storm the field worthy.
That's probably the
Um,
most valid one of them all. Is
yeah,
that one?
yeah. But this one, I feel like we're all going in, like I think most Aggies either say yes, I think we're going to win, or they're at least like, well, I think we have like a 50-50 shot.
Yeah.
And to me, that's not a game where you rush the field because
I
most of us are going in thinking that a win is at least possible, if not likely.
yeah. Well, and like even though they're like you had a great, I think it was your tweet earlier today, right? Like, what is an upset? Is it based off rank or based off of the Vegas spread?
Which, by
Um,
the way, that was completely unhelpful because the results ended up like 51-49. And then it was just a slew of replies of people just arguing the opposite. Like it was
I,
just
I thought
just
I
right
thought
down
for
the
sure.
middle.
And I'm not sure which side you fall on, but I thought it was so obvious that like, oh, it's the betting line. Like if Vegas says, oh, like you're the underdog, like I don't care what a bunch of journalists said what our ranking is. Like if you're favored by like A&M is the favorite in this game. Like if we beat Notre Dame, it's not really an upset, you know. Uh,
Yeah,
but
see,
people
I'm
were
the opposite.
arguing. Are you really okay? So,
I am, yeah. If we're being honest, I feel like it's never really just either or. It's kind of a nuanced conversation,
Sure.
and honestly, it's probably something where it's like if the rankings and the betting line are in conflict, then it probably means it's not an upset either way. It probably just means it's a
Yeah.
good game. Yeah, because I was talking to somebody, I said it's like okay, it's like if I really had to nail it down, I would say it's an upset if it's like both 10 or more spots in the rankings and 7+ points on the betting line.
Right.
Because
I think
because
it's
that's like a definitive like there is a clear like
right.
team that we all agree is better. Anything beyond that, and it's kind of like, well, it's kind of up for debate, and it's yeah, maybe there was a team we thought that should win, but it's not a shocking result.
Right. And I think it's probably different for like your diehard fan versus like your casual fan. Like anyone that doesn't follow the sport turns on their TV on Saturday, and A&M wins, are gonna be like, oh my gosh, 20 beat 7. That's an upset right there. Like,
Yeah,
and I think perception wise, it probably would be, given that new coach and all that stuff, and like even though A&M is favored, it's by a very short, like a very fine margin, and so yeah, I think some kind of parameters would, and this is all just like not a meaningful you know conversation to be quite honest. But, like we're just
we're
it's
not going to
something.
solve this problem tonight.
Yeah, no, we're not. So, but comment from a good buddy Chase Caldwell. Chase, we love and miss
Ah,
you. If we win, over under how many times will they announce "Do not rush the field"?
yeah.
So I've never been there when we've like won one of those games. Do they do that? Like, do they announce like, "Hey, do not rush the field"?
I can't say I've ever heard it. I know I was there for the LSU 7 overtime game in 2018. Um, and I don't remember them saying it, and I know for sure that people did it.
Yeah,
Um, although I don't know if that changed because hasn't the SEC like upped
they
their
have.
fines
Yeah,
and everything on it?
that's
So
my biggest argument against it is like, if we have to pay $1 million, like, don't do it.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
and honestly, like I bet I can answer that question just based off of what I've heard from Trev Alberts and his kind of attitude towards money.
yeah. He's like, we
Um,
do not have that money to waste.
he's like, we will
So,
literally tase you if you jump over
yeah,
this over this
yeah,
thing.
yeah. The athletic department may be a lot more motivated to stop it than they used to be.
Yeah, yeah, I could see that for sure. So, as cool as I think rushing the field is cool in general, like especially in those special scenarios. But I mean, for something like this, let's not do that, and let's not
Yeah.
go and pay $1 million for no reason.
And if like and that kind of has to be like organic because like if we're sitting here 3 days before talking about whether we rush the field, it probably means that like we shouldn't do it because the win probability is already too high.
Yeah,
Like
like
rushing the field should happen when like in the games where we're all just like we're gonna get murdered.
I wasn't sitting here before LSU in 2022 like, oh, well, let's not rush the field.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh, like
we were
don't
just
lose
like,
by don't lose by 30 is
well,
what I'm
yeah,
saying.
exactly. So it's like so yeah. If you're having the debate days in advance about rushing the field, you probably don't need to rush the field.
Yeah, Chase said they put up the cost on the jumbotron of that, which I think it's gone up from 250 to either 500, it may be $1 million now, but so like just put that on the screen like, hey, this will cost us $1 million.
Yeah,
Please do not rush the field.
we'll be
But
collecting $100 from every person that rushes the field.
yeah, exactly. Which I mean that would cover it.
Yeah.
If Oh shoot. Well, we got an hour out of that, so yeah, I think we've we've covered our bases. We have talked about A&M. We talked about Notre Dame. If you have followed along this summer, then then you know where we both stand and where this media outlet stands on this team and this game. So we appreciate you very much. I guess before we close, any last words?
No, man, I'm excited for Saturday. It's like I just found out today that I'm going to the game, so even more excited than I was. We'll hopefully actually see you in person for the first time. So
Yeah, for sure.
should be pretty fantastic.
Let's discuss our tailgate plans after we get done here. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'm thrilled. Gonna knock on wood. I don't know if y'all can hear that, but I'm gonna knock on wood that there's not any kind of lightning, which I think, from what I've seen on Twitter, the chances are extremely low, like 3% that there's lightning. But it's a total mood killer, and we didn't talk about the mood, the vibes around this whole thing with new coach, new field, some other things that could come back. Not confirmed, don't know, but I'm just saying it could happen. So if it does, it will send that stadium into the freaking
Say it
stratosphere.
it could be electric, one might
Yeah,
say.
yeah. But as always, thanks so much for hanging out and supporting us. Give us a like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and more importantly, beat the hell out of Notre Dame.
Hell yeah.